Hey, what's up, guys? This is Shaylos89, and we are here with a snarled video, snarled reaction, and it's called Dark Fairy Tale Inspired by Magic. The Gathering Scary Story. Jesus, I can't talk. And I think it's called The Baker's Inn or something like that when I get into the story. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Hey, I'm Sapphire. Want to hear something scary? The Baker's Inn. This week's video was sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. Now enjoy an original dark fairy tale inspired by Magic the Gathering, Throne of Eldraine. In the countryside of Ardenvale, on the outskirts of Beckborough, there was a family dairy farm that fell upon desperate times. To save the farm, the father sent his eldest daughter, Gertrude, to sell the family mule at the nearest village. After a half-day's travel, Gertrude arrived in the village of Beckborough. She made her way to the marketplace and began asking around. The merchants waved her off or made joke offers on her mule. It was almost enough for her to give up and go home, until she met a charming man in a feather cap. "That's a good, strong animal you have," the man said. "You deserve a good price for a mule like this." He made Gertrude a generous offer, even more than she expected, and traded her mule for a full bag of silver. Cheerful with her fortune, Gertrude skipped and jangled to a building named the Baker's Inn. She decided she could afford a room for the night before embarking home the next morning. The inn was warm and lively, with customers lined up to purchase dinner pies from the bakery counter. Gertrude reached the counter and she met the welcoming eyes of the baker. She eagerly placed a piece of silver on the counter and requested a pie and room for the night. Smiling, the baker placed the silver on his scale, but at that moment, his smile changed to a frown. He grabbed Gertrude by the wrist. "Where did you get this? You can get in a lot of trouble buying goods with plated counterfeits." Gertrude looked down at her bag of silver, confused, and cold reality settled in. She began to weep.
Yeah, cold reality set in that dude scammed you out of your mule, and he gave you some fake coins. Girl, why would you send your daughter in the first place? You're like your oldest kid. Don't send your kids out to do something. Do it yourself. Because you don't know what could have happened to your daughter. And, you know what?
"I didn't know. I thought the silver was real, I swear," she pleaded. "The man in the feather cap tricked me. I sold my family mule to him, and now I can never show my face at home." The baker felt bad for losing his temper. "Oh, you poor child. That is not fair." He handed her a pie from the rack and gave her a table to sit and eat. With cheeks still moist, she ate the pie. It was hot and filled with a delicious, very tender beef filling. It was no wonder the bakery had people lined up earlier. It was evening now, and Gertrude had nowhere she could go. But the baker had a proposition. "Young miss, you saw how busy it got in here today. How would you like to work for me? You can live in the spare room and parcel money home to your family." Gertrude was speechless. She hugged the baker, and after he showed her the room, he
I don't trust it. I don't trust it. No. I mean, thank you for offering me the room, but I still don't trust it.
Explained her duties. She would clean, tend the bakery counter, and prepare the guest rooms. Gertrude would have a chance to save the family farm after all. She fell fast asleep. Later that night, she sprung awake to the sound of blood-curdling screams echoing through the walls of the inn. Was this a nightmare? What could she do? Gertrude clutched the sheets to cover herself and laid scared for a long time. But eventually, the screaming ceased, and she drifted back to sleep. At sunrise, Gertrude came downstairs and welcomed a knight in noble silks with a sword at his hip. When the baker came out of the larder, Gertrude asked if he had heard the unsettling screams the previous night. "Oh, what you heard last night," the baker began ominously, "is the inn's worst kept secret. We have a ghost problem. We're lousy with them, in fact. If I'd known better, I wouldn't have built my bakery in a haunted inn. They're a nuisance, yes, but they're harmless, I promise." This statement prompted laughter.
You lying. Lying. You lying. A haunted with ghosts. I mean, I believe in spirits, but come on now. A haunted with ghosts, and she heard screaming. Oh, that's much of a ghost don't really scream. You lying. He was chopping somebody up. Or something. He was chopping something up that screams.
From the knight across the room. Sounds like a hoax. I've seen all there is to see. Witches, fairies, redcaps, and trolls, but never a ghost, he said. "Well, tonight, maybe you will," derided the baker. The baker sent Gertrude to prepare the knight's room, and after a long day of sweeping and selling pies, she sat down to a tasty pie of her own. Later that night, she awoke to more terrible screams. But now, instead of being scared, she was just annoyed. She buried her head in her pillow and filled her mind with positive thoughts. Decadent meat pies, her family, the farm. And with that, she drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Gertrude couldn't wait to ask the knight how he slept. But the knight was nowhere to be found. The baker pulled a fresh rack of pies from the oven. "What happened to the knight?" Gertrude asked the baker. "Oh, him?" the baker said dismissively. "He was summoned to an errand for his lord and took off in the night. Care for a pie?" This answer didn't sit well with Gertrude, and the lack of sleep was beginning to wear on her. The rest of the day, customers came in droves, and she was able to distract herself by selling pies. But night came too soon. To Gertrude's surprise, the inn remained silent. Somehow the silence was more unsettling. What, did the ghost decide to take a day off? She got up and crept over to the guest room where the knight stayed before. There was nothing remarkable. It was just empty. She thought she had seen enough until she noticed an odd seam in the wall. She pulled it open to reveal a secret compartment. There, in a pile, laid a hoard of belongings: silks, swords, shoes, and armor. Every instinct told Gertrude it was time to leave. She rushed quietly down the hall, rounded the corner, and then covered her mouth in shock. The baker blocked the doorway to her room, his back turned. He was looking for her. Gertrude moved decisively in the other direction, down the stairs and towards the exit, until suddenly she heard a man crying for help. Risking escape and safety, she followed the cries over to the larder. Inside, Gertrude saw sacks of flour, a bloody butcher's block, and a pile of human skulls. She gagged, now horrified by her new understanding. The pie's secret ingredient. Gertrude found the man who was crying out and immediately began to untie him, and then stopped. There was now a knife held up to her face. It was the baker. "Do you remember this man?" asked the baker. Gertrude glanced at the tied-up man and had a shock of recognition. "Yes," said the baker. "It's the man with the feather cap who humiliated you. And now he's here, at your mercy." She recoiled at the baker's sinister invitation. "Even if he hurt me, nobody deserves this." "I see," said the baker. "But if you let him go, I'll still need meat from someone to make the pies. I can't keep up with demand, you see. It's either him or you."
I mean, I guess it depends on how much you chop her up, but still, she ain't gonna make enough pies.
A week later, Gertrude's family began receiving parcels of silver delivered by messenger once per week. Over time, the farm began to flourish again and was doing better than ever. I miss seeing Gertrude, Father said, but because of all her hard work, the farm is safe. I just hope she's happy wherever she is. And to this day, they say you can get the tastiest pies in all of Ardenvale if you visit a little haunted inn run by a baker and his assistant. But whatever you do, don't stay for the night.
Okay, so she stayed and killed, knowing that she killed the dude that scammed her. Okay. Whatever floats your boat, child. Whatever floats your boat. Now, I've heard it on the podcast. Well, someone I heard it on the podcast. So I kind of knew what was already going to happen. But on the podcast, you don't know who got killed and who stayed towards the end. So I'm kind of glad I saw the animation. But whoo, it took you that long to figure out that he was sitting there having a whole smorgasbord with the humans and why the pies were so good, and you were hearing screaming and you didn't put nothing to it until you saw people's stuff. Come on now. But if you like the video and you like what you see, check out Snarled with their new host for a bit, and check out their podcast, Something Scary Podcast, which you can find on Spotify, any other places that does podcasts, or just type it in and Google it. I'll put their channel in the description below. I'll put this video in the description below. And give this video a like, hit that notification bell, and subscribe.
This sound like what? 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 This sound like what?